Hey everybody, and welcome back to Tenza Motorsports. In today's video, we're going to be doing the Bevinsee oil cooler cap. This right here is a long-awaited project, and not only because I've been talking about doing one of these for a long time, it's also because we've had some max peding rod parts sitting in the garage for about a month and a half. I did get kind of excited and put those on off camera, but we'll go over where I routed everything. Routing for this install is going to be your biggest challenge. Everything else is pretty much, take the old one off, spin this one on. There's a little bit of modification you have to do on the intake, but it's like a 2-second thing. We'll go over that in just a moment. Before we do, make sure you are subscribed to the channel. Like if you enjoy this type of content. We do giveaways. Make sure you're following us on Instagram, Tenza_Motorsports. Also, for this part here, we do have a discount code. Tenza11 will get you 11% off of your order, and I'll have everything that we use today linked in the description below, including the max peding rod parts as well. This oil cooler cap allows you to put sensors on it. So right here on the top, there are 2 different ports. This will allow you to run pressure and temperature, which is really nice because I actually don't get to see any of that information. Oftentimes, like on the M3s and things like that, they actually do have your oil pressure. This system, the way I have my dash set up now, does not give me any of that information. So it's a little bit scary to drive around without knowing some of that information. This car has been needing this for a while. 400 horsepower is not something you want to run without being able to cool your engine oil down. But again, I have no idea what temperature I've been running it in the past. We do live in a slightly colder climate, but it does get into the hundreds during the summer. So yeah, anyways, let's stop talking and get this installed. We're going to remove the old one. I'll show how to do that. And then we're actually going to jump over to my wife's car because we've already modified this one because I've had this in just to test fit before we started recording, so I didn't get halfway through the video and find out that something wasn't compatible. We're going to jump over to my wife's car. I'm going to show you how to modify the intake. Again, it's nothing scary. It only takes a few minutes. We'll go do that real quick, and then we'll jump back over here and show you how I've ran everything. And in a later video, we're going to be doing another one of these installs fully on my wife's car and doing the oil cooler as well. So let's jump over there. This part of the intake right here, there's a seam. And all you have to do is just take off like a 1/4 inch right in there. And it's really not that difficult to do. So we're gonna remove this so we can get the tool back in there. I'm gonna put a rag over top of it because you don't want to get plastic chunks all over into your oil. And we'll remove this, put a rag down, and then we'll just trim right here. And that will allow us to fit this. So now that we have the top able to release, that's what it looks like apart. And then you'll just spin this on. One thing to remember is that you'll slip the oil filter in first, then you'll spin this on, and then you'll come bring this back over top and reinstall. Where this is going to be connected to oil cooler lines, and then you'll have sensors here, you'll just remove all the screws and you'll pick this up and you'll just put it to the side. You'll spin this off, remove the filter, and then just put it all back together. There is one special way to screw this on, and we'll show that in just a second. Let me show you the only issue with putting this on. You go to install this, besides the fact that, again, this is in the way, so we're gonna have to do something about that. But your car will probably not have this issue, is that it wants to rub the intake manifold. You see it touching right there? It's literally like just a tiny little itty bitty spot. So I'm gonna remove this. We're gonna take a rag. We're going to cover this and make sure it's down in there properly so that it's not going to come up on us. And then I've got just a 3-inch disc here. This is just a Ryobi tool. Any tool that you can get back in here without damaging the intake will work. So I'm just going to go along here. So we trimmed just a little bit, test fitted it, trimmed it again. We're gonna go up close here and show just how little it takes to get this to fit. So there's where we shaved off. And you can see it is just barely. So once you're to this point, you're able to screw the cap back on, and we'll show what that looks like once it's on the car. I'll also show you how to tighten it. So once we've got it to the point where you can no longer hand tighten it, I just put in these 4 screws, one every other hole. Once you've got your 4 screws in, you can do this with either I'm using a pry bar right now, but you could use a screwdriver. Once it gets tight, you give it just a little bit of a, and then that's it. You don't want to crank down on this. From here, you'd make sure that this gasket is on there. You'll run those screws out and we'll slide this in. We'll show that real quick. And then like I said, we'll take this one back off because this car's not getting one today. We'll go back over to my race car and get that one installed fully. So that's what the oil cooler cap looks like when it's on the car. Obviously we would have put the filter in there, but I have to put this one back in the box and put it away for a little bit, so I didn't want to make a big mess. That's the install. It's really not that difficult. The hardest thing about all of this is where you're gonna run these, and that's why we're jumping back over to my race car. We're gonna show that off and see how difficult it's actually going to be. So here we are back over with my white race car. We do have the oil cooler right behind the supercharger's cooler. Supercharger doesn't actually really get that hot. There is no point where I have had any issue touching the supercharger, even on a super hot day where we're running it really hard. It's uncomfortable to touch it, but it's not like gonna like melt your skin off. So the cooler for it really doesn't get that hot. And when we turn on the electric fan, you can actually put your hand right here and it pulls air all the way through, like there's no resistance. So we've double stacked the coolers here, hoping that that ends up being a good option for us. But as you can see here, we did 90-degree all the way up, and then we actually ran it underneath this. Depending on how your car is set up, because obviously this is a race car, there's a lot of things that are missing out of the engine bay. If you've got a stock car, running an oil cooler is gonna be difficult to find room for it. You'll probably end up having to go down below where my intercooler is for the supercharger kit. But for us, we were able to go right here. There's plenty of room. And I just went straight up and over. And then the lines will run like this. We do have these angled ones. We'll go like this. I can actually get the Bevinsee oil cooler to sit at an angle. It doesn't have to sit absolutely perfectly straight. It can pivot a little bit depending on where the holes line up. So it sits over like this. These will come up at an angle and we'll be able to hook those in. Since we've already shown how to install this, we're just gonna put this section on time lapse and I'll go over it again when we're all done. But yeah, really excited for this. One other thing when you're doing these, the metal, the braided metal is terrible. So we're actually gonna cut this back just slightly without cutting the hose. Because when you put these on the ends, it's like you can't tighten them enough. So anyways, we're just gonna put this on time lapse, we'll get it installed, and then we'll show it all done. All right, so it is a while later, but I just want to show the car does run and it's not like leaking oil everywhere like it was earlier. Nothing to do with these parts or the max peding rod parts. We actually had these loose, and so they were leaking oil onto the top of the oil cooler, and then you can see it down on the top of the intercooler. So the car's gonna need a wash. And then up here, this one, for some reason, I don't know if we over tightened it up front and it just was giving us issues, but we actually ended up breaking this piece, ripped it off of the clip. So there is a ring clip in there, and pulled it away from there. went to go tighten it, all of a sudden it went from tight to loose, which is not good. So yeah, everything's put together. You can still reach everything, still get at the bleeder screw, coolant cap. So yeah, let's go start the car, and that's pretty much it. I really appreciate everybody so much for watching. And again, as always, everything will be linked down in the description below. Any comments or questions, you can leave them down in the comment section below. Thanks so much for watching.
Bam!